Hey guys, Chris here with 4K Motoring, and I'm back with you today with another video. Today I'm going to talk about the 10 things I love about my 2015 Ducati Multistrada. So first I'd just like to mention I first bought this Multistrada in 2015. I ordered it new, and I've had it since then, so 6 years or so now. It's been pretty great. I have about 35,000 miles on it now, and overall I'll kind of tell you how I feel about it. But I can confidently say this is the best motorcycle I've ever ridden and certainly ever owned. So starting at the front, one of my favorite things about this bike is the lights. They are incredible. It's got dual headlights, the high beams rival the sun. I've got another flasher on the back, but just take a look. They're great. And that's not to mention the cornering light system that's built into this bike, where most of the things I love about it's stemming from the IMU, the yaw pitch roll sensor in the bike. But as soon as you lean into a corner, lights turn on the sides, and that is phenomenal. I very much enjoy that on this bike. One of the next things that I love about this bike, and is probably definitely towards the top of the list of my favorite things, is this TFT display. As you can see, you can change modes, change the display around, lots of features that you can modify on it. It's just really cool while riding. It gives you a lot of information. It's very easy to read. The only small problem I have with it is that at night it does switch from a white background to a black background, but it doesn't dim the backlight at all. So if you're riding when it's really dark out, it can be kind of distracting. Other than that, great center for information, great layout, very much enjoy it. The finger controls, the thumb controls for the handlebars are actually really intuitive to work it, and overall I think it's a great system they've developed for this bike. Certainly no list would be complete without mentioning the Multistrada DVT engine, the L-twin that comes in these Ducatis. This one here is, as some of you guys may know, the variable valve timing model that Ducati came out with for a couple years. It is rated to produce 160 horsepower, which is phenomenal for this platform. The valve service intervals were also greatly expanded when they went to this bike, that the intervals are about 18,000 miles between valve services, which is not too bad at all, really. Not quite the same as the new one, but for the Desmo system, not bad. Oil change intervals are 9,000 miles. I don't push it quite that long, but Ducati says you can. And this is the variable valve timing system. So the earlier ones there's an 11 degree and I think a 40 degree overlap Multistrada variant that you can get. They ran really well in certain RPM ranges, but on that low RPM, just kind of chugging around town, they were very lurchy, very chuggy. They didn't have very smooth power. So this system, per Ducati, it gets rid of that. It makes it very smooth at the low end and still gives you that high end ramp up, but it does it in a way that's kind of seamless. It uses oil pressure to kind of modulate that system, so the higher the RPM, the more it advances, and it's on the intake and exhaust side, so it's a pretty cool system. And so far in the time I've had it, it's been wonderful. I've loved it. It's definitely been more refined than the older Multistradas that I've ridden, and absolutely gives you all the power you need. Another thing I've come to love about this bike, and excuse the shadows, I'm kind of right here in the sun, are the Brembo M50 brakes. These monoblock brake calipers. This has a 330 millimeter front rotor, which is, if you guys follow MotoGP, they have a 320 and 340 millimeter rotor, at least on the 2015 season. And that's different. They have carbon and they have some different stuff going on, but at least size-wise, right in the middle of the two ranges that MotoGP uses, it was the same caliper design that MotoGP used, different material, a little bit different stuff going into it, but still a very stout, very powerful brake setup. The rear on this bike, I know most people say the Multistrada rear brakes might as well not be there. The 2015, they tweaked that a little bit so you actually do know it's there, which is an improvement. It's still not as powerful as the front for sure, but it does make a difference. So the brake package on this bike, absolutely phenomenal. And that's not even including the cornering, braking, and all the other stuff enabled by the IMU. Well, we've talked about it enough. I guess it's time to start discussing the actual IMU itself. It sits underneath kind of this area here. It is a small electronic device. It has accelerometers in it, so it basically keeps track of the bike's yaw, pitch, and roll forces going on. And that enables a couple things to happen on this bike. So everything on the bike is fly-by-wire, just about. The throttle input is completely electronic. The clutch is hydraulic. There's an electronic slipper option in it. And the brakes, obviously, there is a hydraulic connection, but it goes through a computer a little bit. So this system knows what the bike is actually doing at all times. There's wheel speed sensors, there's actual suspension sensors, there's the yaw, pitch, roll sensor, and that's wheel and suspension for both sides. And then it knows the input that you're giving it on all control surfaces. That enables this bike to make sure it can kind of help you out, I guess is the best way to phrase that. It's got a bunch of levels of traction control, ABS, cornering ABS, suspension tuning, all that's all semi-active all the time. And you can vary those levels to get exactly what you want, including wheelie control. And with that, it really lets you tailor the bike to exactly the riding experience you want. And the bike interacts with you in a way that is not invasive, but supportive, I guess. I've noticed when I've dipped into the ABS or when the traction controls come on, it doesn't suddenly, cut throttle. It doesn't become very jerky or do some of the things that, some of the cheaper Japanese bikes would have done, or even the older, like kind of first generation ABS bikes would have done. It is very smooth and just kind of brings you back to that realm of control. And if you're trying to do something that it knows would take you out of that, it tells you it's not going to let you do that. So that's a pretty cool system, and I know I've been in a couple situations where I thought for sure I'd be at least sliding sideways and have to deal with it, and this bike has kept total composure, just absolutely refined. It's amazing. I don't know how it does it. If you guys have watched some of the test footage when this bike was first coming out, so the test footage, they actually took a bunch of journalists to a go-kart track, soaked it down with some soap and water, and told people to try and lay it down. I don't have enough good things to say about that system. It works great. That IMU allows all sorts of stuff to happen on these bikes. And the new Multistrada even has the radar cruise control, rear collision notification system, and that's amazing. I mean, these bikes truly are amazing. One of my absolute favorite features of this bike is the Skyhook semi-active suspension. And I know it doesn't look like a whole lot from the front there. I'll kind of show you the top where we can see some wires going on to both sides. So this system allows a couple things to happen. First off, it's convinced me I'm never going to own another motorcycle that doesn't have electronic suspension. The different abilities of this system is amazing, absolutely. So it has some preset modes, and each of those modes is customizable. So there's a sport mode that obviously tensions everything up and makes it a much firmer ride for you, keeps the power on the ground, but it also works with that IMU, the roll sensor, to know if you're leaning into a corner. If you are, it'll vary the actual damping of the shock a little bit to allow it to be a little bit more compliant on the ground and give you better cornering. So you're not stuck with just one setting. It actually changes based on what you're doing. When you hit the brakes, it stiffens up the front end of the bike so you don't dive as much. Same with acceleration on the rear. So it's pretty cool, those things. When you put it in a comfort mode or touring mode, it goes ahead and softens everything up, and it is like you're floating over the ground. Ducati calls this system the Skyhook suspension, and at least in touring mode, it feels like it. It feels like you are connected to a Skyhook and just floating over the terrain. It's impressive what it can do. I've had multiple people riding with me that have commented that they can see my wheels just going all up and down, kind of crazy, but the bike doesn't move at all. And that is astounding. It does have automatic preload adjustment on the rear, so depending on your setting, depending on your luggage and passenger setting on the bike, it'll actually tension and untension the rear preload. It doesn't do that as you're riding, so it's not like the new Harley or even the new Multistradas that will, when you come to a stop, lower themselves or try and keep themselves absolutely level. It doesn't do the spring stuff, it just is all damping while you ride. But it's pretty impressive what it's capable of doing, and it absolutely sold me on the Skyhook suspension or the electronic suspension. It's amazing. In typical Ducati fashion, I do have to mention one of the things I love about this bike is just the ergonomics and the geometry of the bike itself. It is incredibly intuitive to ride. You just think about what you wanted to do and it just does it. I've had some other bikes that you have to kind of muscle over a little bit. I've had some bikes that just require a little bit of effort or cause a little fatigue. Felt a little bit sloppy. This thing is like a scalpel when you're riding it. It does exactly what you want it to do. It does it without, I mean, it's almost like you don't have to think about it. It just does it. And one of the cool things is, because this is the upright adventure bike, you can make really tight circles and also be stable, fairly stable on high speed runs. So the only downside I would say is that it's biased a little bit more towards the city street riding or off-roading, and you can get a little bit of head shake at high speeds if you load at the back end wrong or don't have your suspension set just right. And I know they remedied that in the later versions. They did stretch out that front rake a little bit, but overall it has been absolutely phenomenal, and it rides, Ducatis in general ride like nothing else do. Moving on to the back of the bike, one of the things I love is the storage on this bike, and both how aerodynamic it is and how much it does hold. So I've ridden bikes before that had large cases on them, especially the more off-road oriented one, and they tend to be not so aerodynamic. So you get higher speeds or high wind scenarios and they feel like sails. These hold a lot of stuff. They really do. I mean, you can fit 2 full face helmets in the top case. You can definitely fit one in the left case. Right case has a cutout for the exhaust, so you can't fit a full helmet in there, but you can fit a lot of things. So overall, I've had no problem going on trips using the saddlebags and having definitely enough to take with me, combined with the fact that you can remove them and there's no frame under here. It pulls out fairly easily and the bike just looks clean. There's no mounting points, there's no rack or anything behind it. It's pretty awesome. The new Multistrada, if you guys have seen that, actually has a rubber mounting system for the top of the saddlebags. So when you lean into corners, it actually allows the bags to swivel a little bit to kind of lean with you when cornering. And I think that's pretty cool. They do have speed rating stickers inside of them. You're not supposed to go over like 118 miles an hour with them on there. But that's really the only concession. They work great. I thought for sure I'd be taking them off all the time, which is why I like the no frame. But I leave them on all the time. They don't hinder you in any way, and they're just useful. So I haven't found myself taking them off more than a couple times since I've owned the bike. So one of the things I have to say I absolutely do love about this bike is just the day-to-day comfort features, such as the center stand, the heated grips, you know, the windshield that's 1-point adjustable. They're pretty awesome. Well guys, I think I'm left with my final takeaway of the 10 things I love about this 2015 Multistrada, and that is just how it looks. In my mind, obviously looks are very subjective. This bike is absolutely gorgeous. Even with the bags on there, by far one of the best looking bikes in my mind that's ever been built. And this is my little secret. The new V4, while it's very impressive, it does a lot of really amazing things. It doesn't look like that. Hope you guys have enjoyed. This is another 10 things I love list with 4K motoring. I'll go ahead and link one of the other ones up here just so you guys can follow along. There seems to be a couple of them at this point, but thank you guys for watching. Please, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can go ahead and be notified of all the future videos coming out from 4K Motoring. We're going to have several a week, and I guarantee that hopefully it'll be entertaining. That's my Multistrada. You're watching 4K Motoring. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.